Good morning, LCC kids. Happy Sunday. Thanks for tuning in once again. I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving in whatever way your family was able to gather this week. But now that we're past Thanksgiving, you know we are in full Christmas mode. Are y'all excited about Christmas? I bet you've already been bringing some of your wish lists to your parents and grandparents and thinking through some things that you might want for presents. I always enjoy hearing Christmas carols, Christmas songs on the radio around this time of year. Maybe you have a few favorites of your own. Maybe you can see what these emojis are pointing to when it comes to Christmas songs. And so we're going to play emoji Christmas carols. You're going to see a couple of emojis, and you've got to figure out with us what Christmas song are those emojis describing. Let's see if we can pull this off. All right, got a face with a zipped lip, not saying anything, and a night scene. What do you think that might be, kiddos? Something quiet at night. And of course, y'all know that is Silent Night. All right, that was an easier one. Let's see how you fare on our next Christmas carol. Red circle. A nose, there's rain from clouds, there's a deer. I bet y'all already have this one right. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. All right, let's pull in another one. Santa Claus and a baby with a pacifier. Hey, I don't blame you if you don't get this one, although the emojis should give it away. That is Santa baby. All right, we'll do a few more of those songs. But as you're putting together your Christmas wish lists, we have just the story from the Bible that can help us at this time of year. Because the theme of today is that we don't know what we want. Often we think we know what we want. We think we know what we need. We think what we know that, we come with our best case and how we're convincing our mom or our dad about something we should be allowed to do or some toy that everybody else has that we need. We just have got to have it. But here's a life lesson. You don't really know what you want. Because sometimes you get exactly what you wanted, and a few days later, you get bored with it, you move on. How many of y'all, you like exactly the same things that you did 3 years ago, 4 years ago? I mean, think about that. If you're 8 years old, 4 years ago, you were 4 years old. Do you like the exact same toys, the exact same technology that you did then? What we want changes over time, and sometimes we learn a lesson about that. And God's people, Israel, had to learn this lesson as well. In our Bible story for today, they come to Samuel. Remember, Samuel is the prophet of the land. He's serving as the judge of Israel. And they tell Samuel this, hey, you know what we want? We want to have a king. And here's the reason why. And here's our first point. They wanted to look like everyone else. And it's important to see that because do you know what? God's plan for Israel all along was for them to have a king. He was going to raise up a king for them. God would give it, and he would have to be a certain kind of king. He would have to have good character. He would have to be wise. He wouldn't be just the king that would be impressive and want to have a lot of money and want to build a big army. But notice why they want a king. They say, give us a king, Samuel, so that we can look like the other nations. The other nations have a king. The other nations, they have a leader who's out there with them on the battlefield, wearing a crown, sitting on a throne, looking all strong and mighty. We don't have that. We just have God. We just have an invisible God on our side. At first, Samuel gets a little grumpy about the request that the Israelites bring to him because he's the leader of the people. But God says this, Samuel, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. They're embarrassed to have me as their king. right? When we are really caring about and really concerned about looking like everybody else, eventually we'll find God himself to be an embarrassment. Because we feel, I got to have a certain kind of clothes. I got to have certain kind of stuff, certain toys that make it look like, I've got what other people have. When we get caught up in those things, eventually we feel like God's not quite enough for me. And that's exactly what was in Israel's heart as well. But it's interesting to find that some of the things that we're really desperate to have, and we kind of put pressure on people to give us, and we might argue with our parents because we need to be able to do it too. Eventually we move on from that, and it doesn't even really matter to us anymore. And Israel's going to learn that lesson as well. We'll follow this story in a little bit, but let's go back to some Christmas songs, emoji edition together. All right, there's a pointing finger, an ear, a question mark, finger pointing in another direction, another ear, another question mark. If you're struggling with this one, hey, I can't blame you. This one's a little bit confusing. Let me help you out. Hearing what? Well, we'll go ahead and help you all the way. Do you hear what I hear? Do you hear what I hear? All right, that's what that one's all about. Let's keep going. A little bit easier here. We've got a snare drum with the drumsticks and a boy. Drums and a boy. What do you think might that be? That is, of course, the little drummer boy. All right, I think we got one more of these. There's a circle. There's praying hands. There is an angel. And there's that night scene that we saw at Silent Night. I bet the angel would make that night kind of holy. And there's an O there. Put it all together and you get "Oh, Holy Night." All right. How'd y'all do on those Christmas carols? Maybe that just gave you a fresh playlist to be listening to during this season together. Let's jump back into our story. We've been learning about that. We sometimes want to look like everyone else and maybe finding that God isn't enough for us in the process. But let's talk about being careful what you wish for. There's actually a saying. It goes like this: be careful what you wish for, lest it come true. In other words, sometimes the thing that we really want, we really wish for, when it comes true, it's not a good end of the story. And Samuel comes to Israel and he brings them that warning. He says, do you really want a king? Well, here's what's going to happen. He's going to take from you. He's going to take your sons and take them off to war. He's going to take your daughters. He's going to take from your money and tax you. He's going to take from your land. He is going to reach back and take from you what you might not be ready to give. And this is a very important lesson for all of us. Whatever we serve, whatever we look to that gives us a sense of security and power, it will always take from us. And that's what Israel wanted here. We want a king to make us feel powerful. We want a king to make us look impressive on the battlefield. Yes, but it's going to come at a cost. And Israel, you might not be ready to pay that cost, because these kings are going to bring you a lot of trouble, a lot of headaches and heartbreaks, and the story of the kings of Israel brought a lot of that to them. But you know what the people say back to Samuel? No. They don't listen. They don't listen to his wisdom that he brings. They say, no, we need to have a king. Give me a king right now, please. All my other friends have a king. The voice of wisdom goes unheeded here. And here's what God says. Samuel's name actually means to listen or to obey. And the first king of Israel, we'll look at his story next week, his name is Saul, and that actually means to ask for something. He's what is asked for, and Samuel listens and obeys what the people want, what they demand. In fact, God tells Samuel this, go ahead and do what the people ask for. Give them exactly what they want, Samuel. You know what? Sometimes God, in his love for us, gives us what we want, even when what we want is going to bring some difficulty to us, because he wants us to learn that sometimes the things that we get so worked up about and complain so much because we don't have them, they're not actually good for us. And we need to learn that God and God alone is our good. And Israel's going to learn this lesson here. But you know what? Here's what's most important to see in this story and every story of the Bible. They wanted a king that looked like everybody else. They wanted a king that would make them look like all the other nations. You know what they really needed? They needed a king who would be unlike any other king. And that's what we celebrate at Christmas time, right? Jesus is the king that we need, and yet he's unlike any other. What king is born in a stable? What king gets laid in a manger? What king comes and dies on a cross for his people? That's the king that we need. And let's think about him. Let's celebrate him in these weeks leading up to Christmas and every week of the year. All right, kids, you enjoy the rest of this week, and we'll see you next Sunday.